From that last segment, I wanted to dig into who these attorneys are a little bit more, just because I was going through it and I wasn't sure if they were all males. I thought they were, but I was wrong. There's two women attorneys that are involved in this case. So I am going to just take a minute to go over the attorneys for the different sides. We've got Disney, we've got the Reedy Creek, which is the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District now, their attorneys, and then we have DeSantis, which is the Attorney General's office. But I just want to introduce you to who these attorneys are. I don't know any of them personally, but let's go through this. So pull up the screen here. First one's, I'm going over Team Disney first. Their lead attorney is Daniel Petrocelli with the firm O'Melveny. They do entertainment law. Well, they're a large law firm, so they do all different sorts of law. But Daniel Petrocelli was named a legal legend by the Hollywood Reporter for his career work in the entertainment industry. He is the trial chair of that firm for all the civil trials, and he's also just the general vice chair for the entire firm for everything that they do. He went to law at Southwestern University, and if you remember the O.J. Simpson case, after the criminal trial, there was a civil trial for Ron Goldberg's father for a wrongful death action against O.J. Simpson. Daniel Petrocelli was the attorney for that case and won the civil case against O.J. Simpson. He was also involved, if you maybe have seen this in the news, in Superman IP litigation. During the COVID shutdown, Scarlett Johansson's Marvel movie, the Black Widow movie, was supposed to go to theaters but went to streaming instead, and that caused a big scene. But Petrocelli was the attorney for Disney dealing with Scarlett Johansson, and then he's currently litigating a Top Gun Maverick case. You've probably seen this one in the news too, where the creators of Top Gun are saying Disney never got the right, or who, maybe it wasn't Disney, but whichever studio that was didn't get clear the rights to doing a Top Gun sequel movie. So he's the attorney on that case. So he's been involved in a lot of cases you see on the news, and he's the lead attorney for Disney in this case against DeSantis. And then in his firm, and I'm also going to go over here. If I were casting these people to be in a movie, who would I put as the actor? So for Daniel Petrocelli, I would put Steve Martin. Originally, I was going to say the guy that played the toy store owner in Home Alone 2, but he's passed away. So I've got Steve Martin. I think that's pretty good. Okay, the next attorney is Jonathan Hacker, also with O'Melveny. He is the appellate practice chair at that office. I went to law school at the University of Michigan. And so, if I'm thinking about how are they approaching this strategically, if they're kind of honing in on their roles at the offices, Petrocelli is overseeing the entire case for trial, setting it up, doing all the work, overseeing that. And Hacker would be looking at it maybe from the lens of the appeal and what issues do we think are going to cause problems, or what do we think might be an issue that's going to be taken up on appeal, those types of things. So his input would be helpful there. And then he has argued 6 cases at the U.S. Supreme Court, which is a lot. He's done a lot more briefing in the Supreme Court. And then they say he's done an appeal in every federal circuit court in the country. So a lot of appellate work for him. And if I were going to cast him in a movie, I think that I'm proud of this one. Jeff Daniels. I think he'd be a good fit. Has a similar look, in my opinion. Okay, next attorney is Steve Brody, and you're probably like, oh, I know exactly who you're going to say for the cast. I'm just going to give it away right now. It's why am I blanking on his name? Rick Moranis. Yeah, I think he looks so similar to Rick Moranis. Anyway, Steve Brody is the founder of the firm's Attorney General investigation practice. So if an attorney general from a state is investigating your company, that's what he helps manage for people. law schools Washington and Lee. And if you've seen in the news again, people taking on drug companies for the opioid crisis. He was one of those attorneys. He won a large trial against Johnson and Johnson. $425 million was awarded, or no, $465 million was awarded against Johnson and Johnson. But that decision was actually later overturned on appeal. So good work, hacker. Just kidding. So Rick Moranis, I think, is the actor that would do a good job playing him just based on looks. Okay, now this attorney is not with O'Melveny. It's Alan Schoenfeld. I think I'm saying that right. With Wilmer Hale out of New York. He's a partner there. He went to law school at Yale. He's a former Supreme Court clerk. I think, I don't recall who he clerked for, but he's also big on doing cases for inmate treatment for inmates with gender dysphoria, not dysphoria. Sorry, I can't read my own notes. And so he's also worked for Disney before and has gotten a case in Florida dismissed. I don't know the details on that. I just saw it on Wikipedia or something like that, which means it's reliable. So if I were going to play him, in my mind, I think he's a cross between Jeremy Piven's and Dan Lovitz. But I actually am going to put Lo Truglio, just because he seems to fit. And what if I were doing this as a show, he would be the guy that like does the discovery, goes after documents, and he just loves that part of the job. And anyway, I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but I just like Lo Truglio being in there. And also, I love the movie Pitch Perfect, so I'm trying to bring in people from Pitch Perfect. And he was what was the name of it? Tone Hanger, one of the a cappella groups. Okay, next attorney. This is the last attorney for Disney. There's a Florida attorney, Adam Losey. He has his own firm, I believe, with his wife. So he's a partner there at that firm, went to law school at Florida College of Law. And then he represented the state of Florida in a big case called the Water Wars litigation against Georgia. It was ultimately, the gist of that case was that they were saying Georgia was using too much water, or doing something to the water that was causing the oysters in Florida to struggle. So ultimately, Florida lost that case. Georgia prevailed, but he was an attorney working on that case. And on his website, he says he works for mostly Fortune 500 companies and owners and things of that nature. And so I think he looks like Will Arnett. He gives me that vibe. So I put Will Arnett as his actor. But if I were making a show or something, I would want to maybe have someone else, a woman in there. And so I'm going to say Anna Camp to bring in another Pitch Perfect. I'll say Buddy. So Anna Camp, and the gist of this would be, she's like fresh out of law school and wanting to make a name for herself. She's from Florida and comes to this firm in this big firm that's O'Melveny, and she wants to learn, and all of a sudden they get kind of dumped on this Florida case. So she's roped into it because she's, the licensed attorney there in Florida. And so it's her just getting her feet wet on this big giant case. And anyway, that's kind of, I don't write movies, but that's kind of where I'm going with this one. So anyway, that's the Disney team. And now let's go to the board's attorneys. The first one is Charles or Chuck Cooper with Cooper and Kirk out of DC. He's the founding partner of that firm. He's from the South. He went to the University of Alabama. And back in 2013-ish, around that time, maybe, and my dates could be off. But anyway, he was the lead. It must have been, anyway, early 2010s. He was the lead attorney in the case supporting the California gay marriage ban, or Prop 8. And I remember that because I went to BYU law school, and he came and did a lecture, a presentation on the arguments for Prop 8, which I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was interesting. And I came away thinking, I don't know how good of a job he did. Don't remember the details, but when I was looking up this case, I was like, man, I feel like I remember that name, and he looks familiar, and that's what it's from. He did a presentation when I was in school, but obviously he lost that case. He also was involved in the what was it, in the Gore Bush litigation. He was on the side for Bush, which did win. And then he's been in a bunch in the Supreme Court and a bunch of other constitutional cases. I think a couple First Amendment cases too, like this one is. So that's Chuck Cooper. If I was putting in casting a celebrity for him, Dennis Quaid. I think a very similar vibe. Next attorney is David Thompson, managing partner at Cooper and Kirk. He went to law school at Harvard. He's been involved in a bunch of legal matters that were in the news. A while ago, there was a Duke lacrosse team that was they were all accused of rape, and it was a really botched prosecution. The prosecutor ended up being disbarred and actually sent to jail for, I don't know if it was falsifying evidence or just not disclosing evidence that would have helped the Duke defendants. But anyway, they ended up suing Duke and the city, and David Thompson was their attorney. And the news says it was three of them, that they made $20 million each. He said that was overstated in the news, but anyway, he was the attorney for that. The torture memos during the Bush administration, he was involved in that issue. And then he's been involved in the 2020 election, I'm going to say, debacle. He filed a bunch of litigation dealing with that. So he's been in the news plenty, taken a lot of high profile cases. That's David Thompson. And for him, I feel a little bit conflicted because I want to, if I bring in more pitch perfect people, I would bring in Ben Platt to play David Thompson. But my first impression, if I'm not trying to bring in pitch perfect people, which I don't know why I am anyway, but my first impression would be Damian Lewis from Band of Brothers. Is where I get him from, but it seems like he's got a good demeanor for him. Okay, next attorney is Peter Patterson, also with Cooper and Kirk. He's a partner there, went to Stanford Law. And honestly, I couldn't find all that much about him other than he's a contributor to the Federalist Society. And then he helped David Thompson in filing and pursuing the voter suppression lawsuits for Trump, which obviously didn't go anywhere. But other than that, I don't know much about him. And I would put Adam Levine. And I guess my thought in here too is if this were a series or something, you'd have the Anna Camp for the Team Disney, and then Adam Levine, Devine. Getting those people mixed up. Anyway, maybe there's some sort of a love interest there or connection, even though they're on opposing sides of litigation. I don't know where I'm going with that. But I covered him. Next attorney, this is the first female on the board's side, Megan Wold. She is also partner at Cooper and Kirk, went to Notre Dame Law School. She also clerked at the U.S. Supreme Court, I believe for, I'm just guessing, but I think it was Justice Alito, and I could be wrong on that. But one thing she did was she assisted in drafting Idaho State's anti-abortion bill. She did it as a lobbyist for Right to Life Idaho. So she is very conservative politically. And on their website, it says that she focuses on complex brief writing. So I kind of imagine her as being the person that's writing a lot of the briefing for the various issues, perhaps including the motion asking the judge to rescind himself, which I'm going over next. So I would have another Pitch Perfect alum here, played Stacy, Alexis Knapp. She would be Megan Wold. And then in my version of the story, I'm thinking, maybe Megan Wold is actually a Cooper, and so she's like the daughter or granddaughter or something of Chuck Cooper, and then um, David Thompson is supposed to be taking over the firm. In his mind, he's worked hard, but then she comes in and kind of messes it up for him, or there's some drama there. I don't know, but the idea is she is Stacy in Pitch Perfect is she's kind of a dummy, but in this she would not be a dummy. She'd be very good. Okay, and then now we have the actual Florida attorneys here. Just as kind of some background, anytime you're practicing in a court in a state or in a state at all, you have to have permission to be there by the bar or by the court, or I guess technically both. And so that's called, if you're not licensed in Florida, you can be admitted pro hoc vice, which means friend of the court. Nope, that's not what pro hoc vice means. That's I don't remember what pro hoc vice is because I don't speak Latin. But the point is, you come in and ask the court to be there temporarily for a specific case, and so most of these attorneys are appearing with the intent to file a pro hoc vice motion before they do any oral arguments or things of that nature. But in the meantime, you have to have a local person to be able to look over your documents, make sure that they comply with the local court rules, and just be responsible for you. And so Adam Losey is that for the Disney side, and Alan Lawson and his partners are the local attorneys for the board. And so Alan Lawson, there are actually 3 partners listed, but he's the one that signs everything. Lawson, Huck, and Gonzalez are all partners listed in the litigation. He's a shareholder, Florida State University. He's a former Florida Supreme Court judge and actually was a judge in the Florida Ninth Circuit, which is where the board's lawsuit was filed against Disney. So he was in that district or circuit. And then when we're talking about the contracts being voided, there was a presentation for the board as they were making that decision, which they were going to do anyway, but there was a presentation, and Mr. Lawson was the person that was giving the presentation regarding the problems with the Florida with Disney not complying with Florida parts of the law. David Thompson was also there. He spoke more about general breach of contract or contract principles. Lawson spoke specifically on the Florida thing. So it's not that he's just there to rubber stamp things and check on procedural things in Florida. He's participating in the litigation. And I think, he's going to be an important person for their team. But I'm not listing the other partners. So he gets to be he gets to represent all of them. And since I'm combining all of them, the celebrity I'd have play him is Morgan Freeman, and he kind of stand for all of them. I'm picking him because seems like he'd be a good former judge. Maybe he's a little bit tired of legal mumbo jumbo and just wants decisions made, and also I'm thinking he might be a little bit thinking, hey, I'm a former Florida Supreme Court judge, and I want to have a little bit more say in this litigation. I don't want to just be left in the back burners and all that. So anyway, that's Alan Lawson. And that does it for the board, the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District attorneys. So now we're moving on to DeSantis' attorneys. He's, of course, represented by the Attorney General's office. And the Attorney General of Florida is Ashley Moody. She went to Stetson University for law school. She was a prior U.S. attorney, and also she was a Florida judge. And as the Attorney General, she's taken conservative stances on a lot of issues. She sought to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And then Florida was a supporter of the 2020 election lawsuits that, again, just kind of all fizzled out. So that's her. She became Attorney General in 2019, at the same time that DeSantis became governor, right? I think that's right. And then the person's actually, so the person I have play her is Kether Donahue, and she's a pitch perfect actress. She played the former head of the Bellas at the very beginning, named Alice. So I don't know, maybe I'll play a clip from that just so you can see where she was, or you know what her tone is, because that's kind of what I've imagined for Moody.
Chloe, look at you. You're a mess. You're unfocused. You're unreliable. And your breath smells like egg. Like all the time. I can't believe the ballads are being passed on to you two slutbags after we graduate. Just don't F up your solo.
I won't disappoint you. My dad always says, if you're not here to win, get the hell out of Kuwait.
Has your dad ever told you to shut up?
Okay, then the person that's actually signing the pleadings for the Attorney General's office is John Gard. He's the chief deputy attorney with the AG's office there. Law school is Tulane University. He was a federal prosecutor and a partner at a private civil litigation firm. And the news said that his appointment was viewed as non-political. So, kind of a neutral selection. Strikes me maybe he's just a guy that wants to do good work, regardless of who it's for. Not sure exactly what that means, but yeah, he's the one that put his name on all the court filings so far in the litigation. And I didn't really pick an actor for him. Maybe I'd do Josh Gad, just off the top of my head here. But I feel like there's so many attorneys on this side, it's hard to pick them all. But yeah, maybe Josh Gad. Okay, now that covers the attorneys. So on to the actual judges. There's 2 federal court judge, state court judge. Mark Walker is a federal court judge with the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Florida. He's the chief judge there, which means he just has some management duties. He went to law school at the University of Florida. And in the news, it kind of reports that he's known for his unique style and humor. I have a picture of him here with a bright blue bow tie on. And he also is known for making pop culture references in court, even spontaneously. And then DeSantis has commented that Mark Walker has ruled against him a bunch. So he's kind of frustrated that Disney's going to this guy. He's like, oh, of course it's going to rule against me. It's a stacked court. But in this case, this is the judge that DeSantis is asking to recuse himself, kind of because, in some ways, of his propensity to make pop culture references. And I'm going to get into that next, but he made some comments about Disney, which DeSantis says shows that he is biased in unrelated cases. Okay, so that's the federal court judge, state court judge. Oh, yeah, so the guy I have playing him is Chris, I'm blanking his name, Poulter. I don't know why I can't remember his name. Dr. Spaceman. That's how I know him. But anyway, I thought he looks exactly like him. Actually, the first person that came to my mind was the principal from Billy Madison.
Mr. Madison, what you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
If not him, Dr. Spaceman. State court judge is Margaret Schreiber. She's over the Florida 9th District. She's the administrative circuit judge, which again means she just has some management responsibilities within the court there. She went to law school at Vanderbilt. And I'm going to play an interesting clip here of her. She did a presentation, or they would do a podcast, the 9th Circuit Court, just to help people get to know the judges. And so she was on that, and I'm going to just play this because it just kind of interestingly ties somewhat into this case.
I was very involved in the music program
Oh, is it
in
playing?
high school, and was actually the accompanist for the choral groups. So we did a bit of touring. One of the tours was to visit a new development or attraction that had just opened up, known as Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. So I have one of the original old paper admission tickets from Walt Disney World that I've never used, and I'm curious to find out if it would still work.
That doesn't have anything to do with anything other than it's interesting. I mean, probably a lot of people in Florida have some sort of experience with Disney World. She has one. She still has the original ticket. So, I mean, clearly she has some sort of fondness for Disney World. But anyway, during her career, she was a second woman partner at her firm. Kind of broke some ground there. She did stop practicing law for a little while, at least in private practice, and helped run a family construction business. So she was the general counsel there, in addition to having some management role. But during the 2008 housing crisis and economic downturn, that business kind of died out or got slow enough where she decided to go back into law. And from there, she was appointed by Governor Rick Scott of Florida in 2011 to be a judge, and she's made her way over to being the judge in this case. So there you have it. That's the attorneys. Oh, and then she would be played by Sarah Jessica Parker. Anyway, so that is the attorneys for Team Disney, for the board, for DeSantis, and then you have the judges there. So that's kind of who we're dealing with. You maybe can get a feel for what I think their personas and personalities might be based on who I've cast. If you have someone different, let me know in the comments. And I don't really know what the show would be about, other than I'm hoping it would be interesting. Okay, so with that, let's go on to the next topic. I'm going to go over the board's and / DeSantis's motion to have Judge Walker recuse himself. Hey, if you thought this video was at all interesting, or if you want to see what happens next, please like and subscribe. It helped me out a lot. Thanks.